Awesome. So everybody, I don't have an N2WS t-shirt, so I felt like I would just go with like an Amazon one, and it fits my personality completely. Before I introduce all the people to, you can join, that's okay, it doesn't bother me. Before I introduce, I gotta call out N2WS. It's gonna be a trivial there, by the way, is not to worry software. I found that out last year on that. Before I introduce also the topic on this, there was a question in the audience. Now keep in mind, make sure you post your questions and we'll add them to the spreadsheet here and I will ask them live, is will my shirts be raffled off? That might be a suggestion here on a Twitter. I might have to do some kind of social media experiment when I get my N2WS t-shirt. So our next topic is ransom-proof your cloud with backup, the last line of defense with N2WS. We have two presenters joining us. The first one is Laurent, who is a senior solutions architect and cloud backup and recovery expert with 15 plus years experience in IT application and hardware sales and support. He's also the front man for one and only French 60s beat band in the UK. And Laurent, am I pronouncing it Les Boff or Les Bof? How do I pronounce it?
We say in French, we say Les Boff, but you're absolutely right. You know, that's correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And our second presenter is a colleague of mine, Anthony. Anthony, who is a senior partner solutions architect and who works with storage partners and customers with 24 years of IT experience. And on an unrelated note, he just adopted two tuxedo cats named Sonic and Zelda. Actually, I like that. That's pretty cool there. Anthony, sometimes you're just gonna have to bring him on the show here if you got that. Anthony, before we pass it off to Laurent, would you like to add anything?
So I just want to say, I've actually been following N2WS for a while, actually before I was even working with them professionally in my current position. And when I was a customer, I started working with them, and they were really, at the time, we had just started looking at doing some cloud migrations, and we didn't really know how to back up everything in the cloud, right? Everything's so different in the cloud. So once we were on AWS, we said to ourselves, well, how are we going to back all this up? And that's where, seeing something like N2WS that was out there, that was really, it was either that or scripts at the time. To me, it was really awesome to see that that they were out there and they were really had that forward thinking to create a solution as good as N2WS backup and recovery. So I admire them for their forward thinking, and it's amazing to see what they've been doing in the past couple of years. And I'm just privileged to work with them as our partner. So thank you guys thanks Laurent and N2WS for having me today.
Well, thank you for your kind words here, Anthony. That's very nice to have you on board for this presentation today.
So Laurent, before I give you guys the floor here, I like your jacket. I think it fits your personality.
Yeah, that's part of my personality. That's me. And I tell you what, usually it's not only the jacket, but it's also the hat that goes with it. And today I brought my favorite fez. So when I go on stage or I DJ sometimes, because I'm also a record collector, I like to go and have a bit of fun, So yeah, this is part of me, but I'm going to remove it because I'm afraid it's going to fall with my headset at the moment. But yes, that's me.
That's all right.
The true Laurent.
I like the fun. I like the personality fun. It makes it engaging for the audience. Remember that throughout the whole thing, drop your questions for N2WS in there. I'll try to ask them live here at the end. We have another raffle magic trick, some more wardrobe chains, and an awesome final act. But Laurent, Anthony, the floor is yours.
Excellent. So I've already started to share my screen. It should be appearing.
Yep.
Can we see that?
Sure can.
Okay, perfect. So let's get us started then. So if you just tuned in, well, just to let you know, this is AWS Festival, and this is the third session. So you're going to be with myself, Laurent, Senior System Engineer at N2WS, and also, as you may have understood, maybe, the Frenchie of the company. And I'm delighted to be accompanied with Anthony, Senior Partner Solution Architect from AWS here. So thank you for joining. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting subject, a subject that probably concerns all of us. It's about malware and more precisely ransomware. Because After all, who has never had to deal with a virus nowadays? And I'm sure some of you would have had to deal with a very nasty one called ransomware. So this session, or during this session, we're going to give you some stories and figures about ransomware. We're going to tell you why it's important to protect your data in AWS against such a threat. And also we're going to tell you how N2WS brings you full protection, not only for ransomware, but for any sort of disaster. But the focus really in this session is ransomware. Anthony?
Sure. And thanks, Laurent. So thank you everyone for joining. Like it was mentioned, I'm Anthony Fiore, Senior Partner Solutions Architect here at Amazon Web Services. And I want to talk to you today a bit about something that's unfortunately in the news a lot more than we'd like it to be. And I talk to a lot of customers who don't want to be in the news. And I think we all know that ransomware is not going away. If anything, it's getting worse. A lot of the variants out there, the more we look at them, the scarier they can be. I certainly am not a fan of some of the innovation that we're seeing in ransomware. So you know, there's no one-click way to basically protect yourself from ransomware. And we're going to go through some of how this is layered. But it's a very costly sort of affair for customers to that actually get attacked by ransomware. So if you look at some of the averages here, I mean, $761,000 is the average ransomware costs. And that is not chump change by any means, especially if you're a smaller organization or even if you're a larger organization. And they're becoming sneakier and sneakier in terms of how some of these ransomware attacks happen. So you know, we see here that 1 in 3,000 emails may contain malware, including ransomware. That's a frightening statistic because it's really only a matter of time at that point that this could impact a company or an organization. Generally, at a time that there's never really a good time for something like this to hit, right? And the average downtime for a ransomware attack is around 19 days. That's a long time to be out of business, especially in today's competitive, hyper-focused and ever-changing landscape. So really, we really want to make sure that customers are protecting themselves against this and making sure that they're taking advantage of some of the opportunities that are out there if they aren't already.
Absolutely. And what is crazy about ransomware is that it's dated back from 1989 when the AIDS Trojan started to spread across the globe. But what is even more threatening is that we've seen that in the last few years, we saw what we call 0-day or even 0-hour threats. Means that if you don't update your antivirus very often, and if you don't do even that more, for example, than once a day, you can still be a victim. So it's important, you know, to be obviously protected, you know, there.
Yep, and to that point, I mean, there's even some folks that say antivirus is, you know, it's almost dead at this point, right, Laurent? I mean, it's just given some of the advanced security threats that we see out there, right? I mean, you know, it doesn't protect the same way it used to, just given some of the advanced attack pieces here. So that's why it's really that castle we're going to come to later is going to be so much more so much more important. So
absolutely.
So who is being targeted? So we've got basically anyone who's connected to the outside world, it seems, right? So anybody who can click on an email, anybody who's connected to the internet. We've got, you know, we've seen organizations from local governments up to some of the larger telco industries, IT organizations. We've seen a lot of, you know, ransomware doesn't really it doesn't discriminate, right? Sometimes they're targeted, as we've seen in some of the recent warnings. It's like we've seen healthcare industries being targeted. We've seen insurance providers being targeted, higher education being targeted with impending cyber attacks, and that's even scarier because we, you know, especially given the global pandemic, we do not want to see customers having to deal with things like ransomware. We want them to focus on running their business. We want them to focus on providing care for their patients. And you know, we look at that WannaCry the stats from the WannaCry. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah,
Approximately
crazy.
$4 billion. It's
Yeah.
nuts. So
Yeah,
there's
amazing.
really
I mean,
no rhyme or reason here.
yeah, I mean, I remember the for WannaCry, they were using a Windows exploit developed by actually the US National Security Agency. Can you believe that? The NSA, and turned that into a worm called WannaCry. And for example, in the UK, it had a big impact on the NHS, the National Health Service, hospitals, etc. You know, our health service and security. So basically, it can be really really nasty and also, I mean, at the moment we have a few example, but it's very difficult to get information on that because obviously nobody wants to advertise that they've been a victim of a ransomware because it doesn't look good and it has an impact, you know, on your business. So, for example, I know that earlier this year, Travelex, you know, paid 1.8 million to the Reveal crime group because of the ransomware.
Yes. Scary stuff indeed.
Indeed.
So on that, I mean, the costs, you know, the biggest cost really isn't the ransom, right? I mean, sometimes it's depending on who you speak to. Sometimes people say, pay the ransom, don't pay the ransom. I'm certainly not providing guidance there. What I'm, you know, that's up to you guys. But really, what I'd like to talk about here is more about things like just the cost of what that loss of productivity looks like, right? The damage to your reputation. You know, nobody wants to be. People want to be in the news, right? If you're a company, you want to be in the news, but not for this reason, right? So we've seen companies of all sectors, you know, they make it on the news when they get hit by this, especially when there are popular apps or there are popular services that are out there that are just shut down because a company is trying to recover from ransomware. So that's that loss of and that's something that may not go away. Like even if you fully recover, you know, there may be customers who may be just not feeling very comfortable using your service anymore because, you know, through no fault of their own, that you know, is there still something there, right? Or you know, what else do they have to worry about? So it really hurts that trust mechanism. But you know, there's also costs of forensic investigations, right? Improving your security procedures, the damage to your data. And then, you know, just something that's not there. I mean, having been on the other side, you know, on the customer side, I can say that if I, you know, thankfully, you know, knock on wood, I've never had this happen. But if something like this ever happens in my organization, as an IT guy, I wouldn't feel comfortable, even if everything was kind of wiped clean, right? It would be really tough for me to feel comfortable just going back into that environment, right? Because you never really know, did they put a back door in it or something like that? So it becomes really tough, even sometimes within the organization, to be productive even after that. So there's a lot of damaging things here, and the whole purpose of this is to make sure that folks watching aren't impacted here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Anthony. And some even would say, but you know, what if they encrypted the data, but also stole the data? Well,
Yep.
whatever the malware is, you know, you will still need anyway to recover in an isolated environment and doing some forensic, you know, on the production. You need to make sure there's no, as you said, you know, no traces of the malware or even another malware, you know, there that is still, you know, that can still bring even further damage. And also new data added, you know, just after the attack. You know, are they going to be safe? Yeah. What if there is also a Trojan horse or any other backdoor? So basically, you need to protect yourself, you know, against, you know, such a situation there, such a disaster.
Absolutely.
So this is where we're coming to your castle analogy there.
Yeah, this was the castle analogy. Some call it layers of the onion or layers of the cake, so to speak. But really, I mean, any good security, any robust security posture is going to be done in layers, right? So if you do happen, if something bad happens to you in the first layer, then you know, if your anti-malware or antivirus isn't up to date, doesn't have that signature, then okay, we're doing email filtering in this example, right? software updates, employee training. That's huge, right? So there are organizations that are going out there and they're actually sending out what they call like white hat messages, right? Where somebody clicks that link and they say, well, this is a test and you just failed. If this was a real malware attack, you would have had malware attack. So really goes back to some of those to employee training and software updates. But then that last line of defense is effective backup and an effective recovery plan. And it's, so we think about disaster recovery. We think about, something like a meteor hitting or a flood or some sort of a natural disaster or something like that. A disaster can also include something like a ransomware attack, where somebody in your organization has to say, okay, we're hit. We have to now declare a disaster. So really having those plans in place, ideally before that attack happens, along with the backups and the recovery procedures, really, it's really just execution at that point, right? So it's one of those things, 99% planning, 1% execution. So you almost, even if it's not an easy affair, it's a one-click recovery or it's an easy button, and you can continue running your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically, when everything has failed, your antivirus, your malware detection, etc., the last resort is recovering, your data, so from your backup. And this doesn't have to be slow and painful. And this is why we're here, to talk about it today. So thanks for that, Anthony. So let me give you a bit of information about N2WS. What is N2WS? Well, N2WS is a unique enterprise class backup recovery and disaster recovery solution. So this means that you can use our product to back up multiple environments across multiple accounts and region. And we're going to explain, during this presentation, why we are number one in what we do, for AWS. And more precisely, we give you the possibility to have a single pane of glass application for all your backups, and you can implement backup and disaster recovery built for AWS, okay, based on the technology of snapshotting. We'll give you flexible, I would say, schedule and policy. You can back up every minute or up to every month if you wanted to. So you can have as many backup as you need, or if you prefer, as many RPO or restore point objective as you need, with the product. Now it's distributed via an AMI, through AWS Marketplace. And this is important because you're going to run an instance with N2WS solution on it. And this is great because you're in control. This instance is your instance. We don't have access to it. So you are in control. In this case, and all the metadata related to the backup recovery will stay on that instance. And then what is fantastic, obviously, working with the snapshots in collaboration with using N2WS is the fact that you are near zero RTO. You can recover in seconds from any outages across different regions and accounts, and it's very user-friendly interface. You can see a screenshot, just over there. We'll give you everything that you need for monitoring, alerting, and reporting. So that's very important. And on top of that, third-party integration.
I do want to just comment on that,
yes.
the AMI and the marketplace. I mean, that's a really powerful thing right there, right? So there's the installation's easy. It's deployed through the marketplace as a pre-baked image. So really the customer is just deploying that marketplace image in their EC2 environments, and then since it's through AWS Marketplace, they're basically billed through their AWS bill. So it's very simple, very powerful, and the customers can be up and running in a matter of minutes to start protecting their AWS environments. So
absolutely. Now, so what do we bring really? Because obviously in AWS you have already the possibility to create EBS snapshot. You have API, CLI, durable storage, AWS Lambda scripting, region, and availability zone. But what we're providing is the possibility to back up EC2 instances, EBS volume, RDS instances, DynamoDB, FSX, EFS, S3 bucket as well, And Redshift and Aurora cluster, to be more precise. So basically all this via a single pane of glass across multiple regions and accounts. And also obviously an intuitive EI, an easy dashboards, recovery scenarios, cost Explorer integration to monitor the cost of your backups, VPC backups. So we added a whole extra layer on top of what is already available in AWS. And that is only the tip of the iceberg, if I can speak like that. You can also archive your backup to S3 and Glacier for long-term retention for your EC2 backups or your EBS, but we're soon going to have that for RDS as well. So you have a lot, there to help you when it comes to your backup and recovery, and also some cost optimization tool, such as the AnySnap archiver, which enables you to archive old EBS snapshots straight away to S3. So you can save money straight away, with our product, by just archiving old snapshots, old EBS snapshot that you took manually with another product. Anyway, so ransomware proofing your cloud. First step is backup. What can you tell us about this, Anthony?
Sure. So so as workloads move to AWS, the backup strategies that you've done on-prem previously, they need to change along with your workloads, right? So it's a lot of the foundational principles, when we think about things like tape backup, for example, right? Things like grandfather son, monthlies, yearlies, right? These become a lot less relevant now in the cloud, and a lot of that's because of things like when we look at things like EBS snapshots. EBS snapshots, for example, the fundamental principle there is that you're only going to be creating changes on those volumes. So your first snapshot of a volume is going to be the full, and then your next snapshot, whether that be in 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 months, it's only going to have the changes, right? So if you're doing weekly backups, if you're only doing it once a week, then it's only going to capture the changes from a week. But generally, most customers doing it minimum daily, right? So it becomes so they really have to kind of think about a different backup strategy. And not that it's different in a bad way, but just they really have to rethink about how they optimize their backups in the cloud. And that's what's nice about N2WS is you guys make it just a lot easier to where customers don't have to worry about, geez, what EBS snapshot do I got to go back to? It's more of just that, hey, these are the backups that ran on such and such date. This is the point in time I can go back to. These are the ones that I can go back to, and it makes life a heck of a lot easier. But you don't have to worry about things like, okay, where's my tape? Is it in transit? Who do I got to call? Is the truck stuck in traffic? One time I was in a situation where the road was inaccessible for the tape vaulting truck. I mean, these are all things that you have to keep in mind. Whereas now in AWS, you don't have to worry about that anymore. I mean, that's our responsibility to make sure that data is there for you, and things like our snapshots are backed by Amazon S3, which provide a minimum of 3 availability zones in terms of copies of data. So they're really durable, low costs, and very powerful. But the key thing there is that customers really need to just kind of think about things differently now that they're backing up their workloads in the cloud, because those previous strategies they're really more appropriate for on-premises than in AWS.
Absolutely. So that leads us to this slide.
Sure. Yeah. It's so backup, right?
Absolutely.
If nothing else, have that backup, right? Whether it's the worst thing you could do is not have a backup, right? I've been in that situation before where, oops, we got to go back to the backup. Where's the backup? And there is no backup. First thing to do is make sure you've got a comprehensive policy in place. It's one thing to deploy, but it's another thing to make sure you've got policies that are including newly added resources and whatnot, or other things. So that really helps. That's like step one. right?
Absolutely, and snapshots are safe. They are copied across, multiple AZs, and then the durability, they are stored in the 99.119% durability. So there's
Yes,
no worry with the integrity of the backups. That's why it's fantastic.
absolutely.
Working with AWS, or in AWS, if I can speak like that. Now, when it comes to your backup, what is very important, it's what we call the 3-to-1 rule. Okay, always have 3 copies of your data on 2 different media and 1 offsite. And this is exactly what you can do with AWS, because what if there is, let's say, a fire, an earthquake, a nuclear explosion? I'm getting really dramatic in there, but it's always good to have a copy offsite as well. But and more precisely, with our product, you can back up as frequently as you want. You can have, 2 or 3 copies of your backup. For example, the original data, then a snapshot, and a copy in an S3 bucket as object. And you can, as we're going to see, also have a copy of site, because we offering the possibility to do a cross-region, a backup. So that's very important, and that's what you can achieve, with AWS, there. So how does the protection work, especially when it comes to protecting within the region? Well, basically what we do is we offer the possibility to actually copy the original snapshots in the target region that you select, and create restore point in that region, so that if there is an event in that region, such as maybe a service that is down, a service that is a bit slow, etc., you can just recover in that particular region, even if you don't have access to the original one, even if you don't have access to the original region where your N2WS instance was running, because we also back up, obviously, this instance. So that's the principle. Now, you can also protect yourself, against a ransomware or account becoming compromised by using a specific disaster recovery strategy, which is a cross account. Okay, so. And this is important, because what if somebody hacked your account? What if you have a rebellious employee, unfortunately, that start deleting stuff in your account or compromising your account? And we've seen in the past some companies even going out of business, small companies going out of business after losing an AWS account. And even if AWS is one of the most secure and compliant public cloud on the market, you're still responsible. It's a shared responsibility. Nothing is 100% obviously secure nowadays, and it's a shared responsibility. You are responsible for the data that you put in the cloud. And then you can even protect yourself against any type of data loss and ransomware or any sort of disaster by combining both. Why not combining cross-region disaster recovery and cross-account disaster recovery, and store those snapshots in a different region and a different account, and use an account that has no production, limited access, only a few people have access to it. So like that, you reduce the attack surface, and you only use it as a vault, to store your snapshot.
Yeah, it's really that break glass in case of emergency sort of thing, right?
Absolutely.
And typically we see with that vault account, there's also a lot of times we see best practice there is to make sure that your permissions and the users that have access to that vault account are much less, or it's very reduced compared to, say, your primary AWS account.
Absolutely.
To secure that.
So more N2WS advantages against ransomware. Well, at the end, backup are installed on any Windows machines or network share, etc. So attacker cannot really cannot destroy them. Nobody can just go into a snapshot and read the files or extract the files, directly, just like that. Backup can continue running even if you're using the N2WS agent. We do have an agent, although we are agentless, and we work by just sending API calls to create snapshot. But we do have an agent for application consistency backup for Windows machines. But even if that agent fails, we can still backup, and your backup can be restored. And we also offer something very interesting, which is VPC capture and cloning. So it's a way of backing up your VPCs. And this is very interesting because obviously when you recover in another region or another account, you're not going to have the same VPCs over there, and especially not the way they were before the disaster. So it's and it's also the insurance that you're recovering in a VPC that is totally isolated. Okay.
Yeah. And that's things we see customers frequently they don't consider VPCs, right? They think data, but then they don't think, okay, well, geez, what about my networks, right? My VPCs, my subnets, route tables, and whatnot. So it's really good to have that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit. I know we only have a few minutes, I think, left, but let's talk a little bit about quickly about recovery. Anthony, if you want to start there.
Sure. So some of the must-haves, you want to make sure you have a safe environment, right? So you want to be able to take that recovery point and recover that to some place where you can have your IT security team perform forensics on an environment which they either think or has had a ransomware attack, but also be able to have business continuity. So this is where that cross-account backup is really helpful, because now you can restore into a second account, or you can restore into a third account. You can restore from that account B to account C if you wanted to, even, right? So it really helps you get back into business quickly from a safe point in time where you know that there's no issues there. Have that plan in place. The worst time to have a plan is when you're actually going through the issue. We've seen that all too many times, and really make sure make sure you've got what your recovery point and recovery time objectives are, right? Sometimes companies don't even have that, right? They don't even know, hey, how long should it take me, right? Because especially with something like N2WS backup recovery, you guys have a lot of different ways to help customers protect their data, but if some companies aren't even aware of what their requirements are, they're not going to be able to make that configured correctly to their corporate requirements.
Absolutely. So it's important to sit down and think about your backup strategy, and even where you want to recover if you have a disaster, in which account, which region, etc. So it's important to take all this into consideration, and also do regularly some testing. Okay, yes. That's very important as well, like on monthly or quarterly basis. Now, at the end, when it comes to recovery, what do we offer at N2WS? If I want to keep it very simple, it's just a giant recovery button. But more precisely, you can recover to another isolated VPC in case of ransomware. So if your main VPC has been compromised, you can recover to another region and account from your DR backups. But you can also use a special cost optimization tool that we have called resource control, that enables you to schedule your servers when they start and stop. But you can also manually stop and start your machine. So why not using this to stop all your machines that are infected in the environment that's been compromised, to avoid the ransomware to propagate? So we can help with this as well. Now, the good news is that you can also orchestrate all this via something that we call recovery scenarios. Okay, so what recovery scenario gives you, apart from the possibility to quickly click a button, run a scenario, and recover several resources at the same time, like EC2, RDS, etc., it's be prepared in case of disaster. So because when it comes to disaster, you don't want to have to mess around with the settings. You just want to select a recovery scenario and just run it. So it recovers everything where it needs to be recovered in your DR region or account. And then also orchestrate the recovery, because you may have dependencies. You may have some EC2 instances that depend on an RDS, etc. So you want to decide in which order you want to recover your resources. And finally, run tests either manually or on schedule. You see, so you don't have to put in your calendar the date and time when you need to run a test, because your boss has asked you to do that on a quarterly basis. Just set up a schedule in your recovery scenario, and your recovery scenario test will run automatically, and you will receive the results with a log via email. Nice and easy. Anthony, would you like to tell us a bit more on compliances?
Sure. So on the compliance piece, is more around being able to prove to a third-party auditor, or someone within your organization about, hey, are we backed up? Can we recover? And then proof of recovery, right? So being able to provide those proof points and those data points is usually essential, especially in some of these more highly regulated industries, right? Or if we've got data like PCI compliance or PII. There's a lot of compliance that's around that. So being able to provide the proof of successful dry runs, right, with recovery scenarios, or proof of an actual disaster of a DR test, right? That's essential for a lot of our customers.
Absolutely. Nowadays, it's not good enough just to be able to back up and recover. You need to prove it. You need to prove it in case of audits, to your boss, any stakeholders in the company. And with N2WS, we're offering you all the tools for that, with a reporting suite, log, etc., and of course, alerts and notifications.
Agreed.
So even more, N2WS recovery advantages against ransomware. For example, a simple thing: if the antivirus succeeded in stopping, your files being corrupted, like, hey, why all my files are just turning in .lck, so it means like I've got a CryptoLocker ransomware working on my files. Well, if you manage to stop the process and you only have a few files affected, use our file level restore, from your backups. You can restore easily file being corrupted, from your EC2 instances of your volume, if you're only backing up at volume level. Even if your main server has been compromised, the main N2WS server has been compromised, you can always launch a new instance in another region and reuse the backups of N2WS, because we offer obviously the possibility to back up the application and the configuration, and then restore straight away your N2WS server in recovery mode and recover everything that you need to recover very quickly. And then, well, at the end, if it's a real total disaster, you still have the snapshot, so you can still recover from the snapshot using your AWS console if really it's a total catastrophe, I would say.
Yeah.
If I can speak like
plan
that.
C, plan C and beyond.
Yeah. Just quickly, I wanted to give you an example of one of our customers called the University of San Diego that have been using us for a while. And basically, they have an environment of 52 EC2 instances and some RDS. They are using 2 accounts, one for dev, the other one for production, one main region, California, and they use Oregon as a disaster recovery region. They do backups with us, so snapshots, schedule twice a day, and they use just basic snapshot, crash consistent snapshot, and also our application consistent backup system for the database to be consistent. So when they restore an instance or volume, they can reuse the database straight away. And their goal is to move all their environment into AWS and be 100%, in the cloud. I mean, if you go on our website, n2ws.com, you can see we have plenty of case studies, if you want, to illustrate all this. Okay, so thank you for listening to us and for being with us, for a bit more than half an hour. I'm conscious of time, and I know it's been a lot of information, but if you need more, you can obviously go on our website, n2ws.com. You can start a trial there. And you can also contact us directly via the email address that you can see over there. So thank you, Anthony, for being with me on this presentation. And thank you for all our attendees that joined in, and also for John, for being around, and there.
Wow, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. First of all, I like all the memes that you got going up here. Need a data recovery. I know a guy. I want to call out the other one. Your database is corrupt, but your backup is fine.
Exactly.
So those are some interesting ones. And you know what? And I also think that the 3-2-1 rule speaks the volume, and it's a good thing to remember. I actually like that. I think that's a pamphlet or something you guys might be handing out. Let's see here. Oh, also one other thing. I learned something new that N2WS does, and it's the VPC capturing and cloning.
Yes, absolutely.
You know what? I would have thought, and I go, okay, backup recovery, but I think that's the last thing people think about. But it's one of the most important things, because without it, everything else doesn't exist. What if you? How do you?
That's correct. And what is fantastic is it works in collaboration with the recovery scenario. So you can basically clone your VPC in your DR region. Once it's cloned, you just run your scenario to recover your environment in your DR region, and the scenario will find the cloned VPC because of the it will have the ID of the original one, and your system, your machines will be recovered and will find the same IP address, security groups, routing table, etc. It's just fantastic. It's a fantastic way to orchestrate, a whole environment recovery there.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important, but I didn't even know that. So you educated me on that. I took a couple notes. I wanted to call that out. Really important. And
Glad,
while we have
glad you
time,
learned something.
go ahead, Laura.
Now I would say glad you learned something today.
Hey, I learn something new every time. I've been hosting these events for you guys for a couple
I'm sure
times
you will.
now, and I always pay attention to see what else I, learn new, and I want to share it with everybody because if I'm learning it new, maybe somebody else didn't know it, and that's one of the things I like to do. Let's just jump into a couple of questions. I have 4 questions here from the audience, plus I put a couple of extras from myself if we have time. One of them is, aren't snapshots already in S3? And what does N2WS do?
Yeah, that's a good point. They are in S3, but as Anthony will be able to say, they are in a special section of S3, if I can speak like that, that is very fast. Now, obviously, they have a cost. Okay, and if you want to keep snapshot for a long run, what we're offering in order to reduce your cost is to archive them as objects into an S3 bucket. So that's the difference there. Okay, and once they are as object in an S3 bucket, you can also lifecycle them into Glacier using obviously N2WS for that, not using the actually bucket system, because then N2WS application will lose track of this data if you do that at the bucket level. And the beauty of this is that you can recover a full instance, a volume, or even do a file level recovery on your archive in S3, in your S3 bucket.
Nice, nice. And one of the questions from the audience, and I'm actually really curious about what is the most common application attacked first in a ransomware attack?
Ooh, I'm not sure about that. Probably, I don't know, email or email servers.
I've seen file server usually. So if there's
Yeah,
a
file
NAS,
servers.
if
Yeah.
there's a NAS share, we see that that's usually pretty simple to get hit first.
Yeah.
Obviously, the easiest target first to get the, kind of attack, and a file share. I mean, all your files are there. That's really one that's going to hit you hard.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like
Absolutely.
that. All right, another one. Having 3 different copies of backups located on different types of media will be hard to manage. What is the best way to do this, and how does N2WS help to manage this?
Well, very simple. When you take a backup and you create snapshots with our application, that's already one media. And when you archive that into S3, that becomes a second media. As simple as that, because what we do is we transform the original snapshot. We're reading the blocks, we transform these blocks into files that then we store in an S3 bucket. So that's your second media, okay, if I can speak like that. And even a third if you use Glacier, because after all, it's going to be a full backup, put somewhere else. But let's say that one media is the snapshot and the other one being object, in an S3 bucket. Make sense?
Yes, interesting. And another one, I work in a federal institution. Do you support GovCloud? And if yes, how can I be sure you don't have access to our data?
That's a very good question. We do support the GovCloud regions, and no, we don't have access to your data, because your data, resulting of the backup is stored in your accounts, because at the end we create snapshots that get managed by the application, and these snapshot that contains your data, they stay on your account. Okay, and same when you archive into Glacier or S3 bucket and Glacier, all this stays on your account because the buckets will be in your account. Yep. Only metadata are stored really about the backups on the instance, but after all, this instance is yours. It runs in your own environment, so you're in control of that as well. This is why it's fantastic. It's the most compliant and secured way of backing up, because we don't have access to this instance, and compare, I would say, to a SaaS application that will be hosted somewhere else, and you wouldn't know who's got access to it in the back end.
Nice. We've got time for a couple more here. Let me ask another question. Is it necessary to take snapshots every 5 minutes during business hours? And will that affect our AWS storage cost?
Is it necessary? Well, it depends on your workload. I would say. If it's a database that tend to change a lot, you know, like every 5 minutes, yeah, why not? You know, you could do that. You know, sometimes 5 minutes maybe is too much, and maybe 15 minutes is it's more, you know, the average, I would say. But yes, why not? All depends on you know, your workloads and how your application or the data for the application, the database is changing there. What was the second part? Sorry, I think I missed it, or maybe Anthony can.
Will that affect our AWS storage cost?
No, it won't, and Anthony can say that really, because after all, each backups are incremental. So if you back up every 5 minutes or every hour, it's still the same amount, sort of amount of incremental backup, more or less. You know, I would say, you know, there.
Yeah, so it really depends on the change rate, right? So if it's changing, yes. if you're changing 100%, I mean, just for the sake of discussion, right? If you're changing 100% every 5 minutes, yes, then every 5 minutes you're going to be taking full snapshots, pretty much. Yeah, but generally not. And a lot of this goes back down to, you know, requirements gathering. You know, what, like, do you need to do every 5 minutes? Most customers don't, right? I mean, maybe for those really tier zero applications potentially, but is every day enough? Is twice a day enough? It really comes down to the requirements of your business, your organization, your business unit. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so I got time for one more, and it's not really a question here from the audience. I actually saw some of the things in here. Is there? You have a brand new AnySnap archiver feature. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I actually read a little about it, and Anthony and I talked about it, but I think the audience might be curious.
Yeah, so basically we always try to help our customers to optimize their cost, and we have tools such as archiving into S3 or Glacier your backups, the possibility to easily schedule your server when they start and stop across multiple region and accounts, and all this via a single pane of glass. So one thing that we thought would be good for our customers is that they may have some old snapshot that they taken manually or even before they started using N2WS, and this snapshot maybe that they need to keep is costing money. So we're giving them the possibility to directly archive them into an S3 bucket and create restore point in the N2WS application. So that's basically they can still restore from those EBS snapshots and directly from the S3 bucket instead of keeping them as EBS, which costs a bit more. So if you start straight away using the N2WS application, you can already save, you know, on your old legacy backup, you know, if I can speak like that, you know, with our product.
And you get to manage it now from a single pane of glass, right? You don't have to worry about two separate sources of truth. If you're doing it with scripts before, and now you're an N2WS customer, you can now have N2WS kind of manage those restore points on your behalf. It's a really powerful feature. So,
absolutely.